So this is Stay Woke Wednesday with Ask Alexis, and we also are expanding the conversation today. We've been trying to do this for a little bit because here's the story. It's like Black Lives Matter. Like when the whole thing happened with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and it just continued to happen. I'm connected with people of other minorities, Kim being one of them, and we had this really intimate discussion of like, hey, where do I effing fit in this conversation, because I'm affected too. And so when the time was right, we were holding that we would open up the conversation in, of course, a high vibe way, helping everybody to be, in that high vibe life without spiritually bypassing the things that also take effect. So here we are. It just so happens to a lot of you know that my husband was quarantined. He got out today. He's out of bedroom jail.
Yay.
Yes, he's good. He tested negative. But we couldn't do this last week. So here we are. It just so happens to be on this really interesting day. And so we're just going to see how this conversation unfolds. So you all know Alexis by now. But do you want to... Yeah, I hope so too. But there might be some new people. I play this replay on Instagram, on IGTV. So maybe just introduce yourself for people who don't know you that might be new here.
My name is Alexis Douglas, and I am an anti-racism educator and a personal transformation coach. I am the co-creator of the Actively Authentic Allyship course for white women who are wanting to start their journey of becoming an ally, which for me, and as it relates to the frequency key, I like how open I can be in here, is becoming the kind of human that can withstand the work that it is, right? So we start with the Actively Authentic Allyship course. It is a work on self while also understanding what's going on in the world as relates to BIPOC people specifically.
Awesome. I love it. And Kim, do you want to say who you are? And say your hello for people that may not know you.
Hi, I am Kim Stock, and I am an intuitive medium that offers channeled guidance sessions to help clear blocks and release old stories to help raise your vibration and live the highest vibing life that you can. My journey has been very interesting through all of this. I am half Filipino and half Caucasian, and Gina and I have had a great conversation, but Alexis and I had a great conversation that really opened my eyes, and just some new emotions and processing happened, and it was beautiful. So I'm very excited to be here.
What, can you share some of those things that, like when you and Alexis spoke and you had this amazing, this really opening conversation, can you share some of those things? Because we do have some other people here that are not, that are not necessarily, that they don't identify as a Black person, but they are a minority or they are marginalized. What were some of the things that you could offer that came out of that conversation with Alexis that you could offer to some people who are listening?
It was beautiful, and it was so organic the way that things revealed themselves in the conversation. What came about was, I think that I was able to show, or in speaking with Alexis, that we were able to talk about quote unquote the invisible minority, which tends to be the Asian Americans or the Asian population. But what was really interesting was that I was able to process. I actually had a little bit of anger and resentment, bitterness in being part of that invisible minority. And where do I fit in this? The conversation is so tends to be so geared towards African American Blacks, Mexican Americans, are Latinx. That's all very much talked about, but this Asian population tends to be a little bit more in the background. Mm-hmm. And so what was beautiful was that I was able to see, like, well, no, I do, my story is involved in this. I've had my own microaggressions. towards myself and that I've experienced. And it was just really beautiful to see that all unfold. And it made me realize that one, I had to do a lot of work for myself in uncovering all of that and process the things that happened to me that prior to our conversation, I didn't recognize necessarily as microaggressions, and being split in this half Caucasian, half Filipino. You know, I'm too Filipino for some whites, but then too white for some Filipinos, and it's like, where do I fit in? So we just had a great conversation around that, I feel like, and it really, really helped me process a lot of that anger and bitterness, and recognizing that I do need to add my voice to this conversation.
Yeah, which was a beautiful, and that's what Alexis and I, you know, we had connected, and we were like, we can't, you know, it's when the time is right, it will expand. And then certainly it has, and it just happens to be on this day. So before we went live, I made a comment before we went live here, and I said, you know, my whole thing is I don't like, because it is like the energy is effing thick right now. You got, and I'm over here going, I feel at peace, because I know what it entails for me to be in my home frequency. I know what I need to do. I know where my belief is. I know where my work is, and I feel at peace. And so what I had said was, I know that no matter what, we are always all going to be okay. And then Alexis was like, well, wait a minute. That's your white privilege, Gina. And I was like, yeah.
I didn't say it that harshly.
No, you
didn't. It was that statement has some privilege attached to it.
Yes, yes. You're always very loving and gentle. I love you. And I said, yeah. So then we dialogued for a little bit, and we realized what I was, where the meaning of it was there is this layer of acceptance, and that, you know, that resonance of acceptance. So let's talk about that a little bit, Alexis, from your viewpoint of what's happening. Like I said, let's talk about the elephant in the room.
So acceptance, I think, is, well, first of all, in order to be able to be in co-creation with your vibration, acceptance is where you have to be almost, well, frankly, acceptance and presence go hand in hand. You just kind of got to be together with those. And so the statement was, I know we're going to be okay. And unfortunately, that the reason I said that statement has privilege in it is because everybody is going to be what they were before and after the election, but that's not okay for everyone. And what we realized was there is a state of acceptance that we're at, which is just kind of like, the election is going to be what the election is. But you made a lot of really great points of, you know, your values, you know, your work, you know, your inclusivity, and you understand that it is an identity shift, therefore a lifelong commitment, unless you shift to a different identity, right? Like, so you understand that it's a commitment and a journey. So checking out of well, first of all, this doesn't have to be an intense moment unless we make it an intense moment. However, some people are feeling it, but checking out of that, I can find out what happened afterwards. I can find out, I don't have to be on the emotional roller coaster that I know and accept will happen for the ride. I still know I'm a part of the solutions being made. I still know the work I'm going to do. I can advocate it for voting. I talk to people about their voting plans. I have the Actively Authentic Allyship course. I voted myself. Like, I did what I can do. I can check out for a few days because I don't have it for things other than what I'm obligated to, because I want to keep my vibe high. There's a race we running. It's a journey we're traveling. I got to be able to, like, keep walking. I don't have to fight and walk. I can just walk the journey.
It's a marathon.
Yes.
It's not a sprint. It's a marathon.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, and we have to be in it for the long haul. And for those of you that are watching, if you have any questions, please ask. There are no silly questions. This is a really safe space. Alexis does a really beautiful job of holding safe space. So please do ask. Like, I want for this to be a very interactive conversation, and you get to decide where it goes. So when we look, Alexis, from your opinion, when we look at what's happening, so we have Kim here today, who, you know, is really coming forward in her story, bringing forward her journey. Like, How do you see this, like, how do you see it, like, or I should say, how are you feeling it would be the better way to ask the question, like in your resonance, how are you feeling? And I'd love to hear, Kim, the same thing from you in terms of the gift, really, that no matter what happens, that the election is bringing, or that this time, that this shift, that it's bringing. How are you feeling about
I
it?
vacillate because I'm still a human in this vibrational experience. And so I do understand it's a co-creation, and I'm trying my best to keep my vibes up. So I kind of, if I can't think about it in the light in which I want to see it, I just don't think about it at all. And I say I'm along for the journey because that's the commitment I've made. But so I feel grateful for things to be exposed when I'm in my observer self. I feel grateful that things are exposed. I feel grateful that solutions are being generated and people are making commitments towards working, like toward the solution. But I think that we are at a place where it is dystopia or utopia, and we get to choose.
That's
So
beautifully said. And I like how you're saying, I like this idea of solutions that are coming in. I mean, we're seeing the numbers in voters, the numbers that people have come out, the numbers in 18-year-olds that have come out. I mean, I was really proud of my stepdaughter for, her, it was like the numbers of people like that cared to vote, that cared. There is such an opportunity for change. There is such, and so in your, like, just off the top of your mind, obviously I'm a white woman, right? Regardless of where I really come from, I appear white. What are some of those things for your, like, people that want to show up in white allyship that you're seeing, like, it's like, okay, this is the cut, like, I hope that this time in history, like, this is the marking for what is it calling people in to do? Like, just a few things that you could maybe rattle off
so
for people.
I need you to be a little bit clearer with that question, because are you asking me what I think that allies or aspiring allies should do to call in during this time? Or are you asking me what I am teaching in my allyship course?
A little bit of both, but like this time, like what this election is bringing in, and what this, like, all of these people that are out here for the very first time. I mean, a girl I went to high school with posted on social media that she voted for the first time. I'm 40 years old. That's crazy to me that this was your first time. That it, so at this point in history, I guess that's my question, is for these people that are just showing up for the first time, what would be your hope or advice for people who want to do more, who they're like, they absolutely know that there has to be change. They're ready to step into allyship. Taking your course is a first step. But like, what are some of those other things for these people who are just now realizing, like, oh my gosh, we need change?
So to recognize, the first thing is know that this election is nothing but an event in a sequence of events you're going to have to be thinking about for the rest of your life. This is our politics. We have one of these every 4 years. This is not the water that is the concern, right? This is, yes, you want to be voting, but staying engaged in the political process, staying engaged in your local elections and the local candidates, actually taking the time to learn about how the political system works, getting to know your city representatives, and recognizing that the power is actually with the people, not the people we elect to do the positions. So if you're just getting out there, and I saw your hand, Kim, so I'm gonna be quiet, I'm gonna turn it over to you. But if you're just getting out there, recognize that this is your new life you're walking into, not something you're gonna do before you get to the rest of your life.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And Kim, I would like to know what your thought about that is too. And I just want to add to what you're saying there is, I'm seeing a lot of people, like I said, just for the first time showing up, all of this emotion. And for me, that's the first sign to be like, dude, like, step in. Like, this is an invitation to lean in. This is an invitation to like step in. So the more emotionally charged you are, it's under there. Like, there is stuff under there that's waiting to be activated, right? And I think maybe that's why, I really truly do feel peace in my heart because I know what I can do. And I know no matter what, I'm going to keep doing it, and I'm going to keep showing up, and I'm going to keep, right? So it's like, if you're feeling that much emotion right now, it's your call. It is your home frequency calling you home to say, show up in this way. Yeah. Kim, what is your thought?
I think it's going to be really interesting to see where everything goes moving forward, because there has been so much. I think this time has been really important in that people are finding their voices. They're finally finding the things that are concerning to them. They're finally willing to fight for not only themselves, but for others. And so I think, very much what you were saying, Alexis, is that we stay in this fight, but also that you keep your voice heard, right? So it's like that. It's like taking off at the starting line in this marathon, and it's going to be interesting as yes, it's been a very emotion filled because it's a presidency election, but I'm interested to see where this goes when it, in the next year or 2 years, when it's more of our local politics. Get involved there, have your voice heard there, use that energy, because that's just as important, if not more important, than the leader of our country, because you can directly impact at that local level. And when I say local level, I'm talking your mayor, your state and House representatives, at that level.
Sorry, I just want to throw in
yes.
School boards, because who's
yes.
educating, who's picking the curriculum for your children to learn from has a large impact on how you're just now finding out.
Yes.
So school board and what their views are. Do they lean more toward an inclusive history or toward a history that was only written by the victors?
Right. Exactly. It's all of that local level is, like I said, just as important, if not more important, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love all of that. School board, local, like, educate yourself, know what you could do. Catherine saying, same here, Kim, half Filipino, half Indian here, invisibility and downplaying my experiences. Other people have it worse than I. So I think, Catherine, what you're saying is, it's like I think you're downplaying that, but where it's like, and I think, Kim, we even had this discussion where it was like, oh, well, I don't have it as bad, so I can't speak up, or I can't, and it's not the truth. That's a story that gets played out, right? As I burp, excuse me.
Go ahead, Kel. And then I will
go. Yeah, I was just going to say, I was totally where you were, Catherine. I really downplayed it. And I was like, do I really add my story because it's not about me right now? And that's where that conversation with Alexis and Gina was so important, was that, no, it's not about me right now, but I can still add value in honoring my experiences. And I think we actually talked about it, Alexis, where in putting words to my story and my experiences and sharing that with family and friends and adding that voice, I was able to see perspectives flip for those individuals, because it was something that maybe they could relate to a little bit more, because, right, wrong, indifferent, whatever. But it was like, well, if it can happen to you, then it's happening on a much bigger scale, essentially. So it was really nice to see those perspectives flip. So
that was actually going to be so a few things. Everybody shows up with a story, and nobody has the right to take your story from you whether or not, now that's from you, right? Like, so you still have every right, and it is valuable to understand your own story and have language for your own experiences. However, speaking out against injustice is for everyone who wants justice. You don't have to be one of to stand with. And even though there's this model minority for Asian Americans stereotype, don't get it twisted. Xenophobia is up really high, and Asian Americans, because of the China virus, are getting they're getting hate crimes and attacks and slurs and things like that. But as long as we have a standard for what's normal, there's going to be a comparison to white normativity, right? Like, so of, it's not surprising to me that Kim has had to have microaggressions or has had to experience microaggressions. It's not surprising to me, Catherine, that when you are thinking about, you're invalidating your own experiences of microaggressions instead of understanding your feelings by comparing it to the worst of, instead of the wrong that has been done. Because just because it's done less to Asians doesn't mean that it's okay whenever it's done to someone who's Asian. It's still wrong. An injustice against one is an injustice against all, and it dehumanizes all parties involved. The person committing the injustice and the person who's having the injustice committed against them. So your story is yours, and speaking out, and that was the beauty in the conversation, was that through having language for your experiences, Kim, you were able to give other people actual like real life lived experiences for someone they love and care about. You were able to offer that perspective. One of the things that I like to say is, white people, if you don't know any racist in your life, then maybe like you have room to say, oh, it doesn't exist. But if you know one, guess what? You don't get to say it doesn't exist. And I have yet to meet a white person that doesn't know at least one. And usually they know way more than one while they're denying it exists.
Yeah, that is a really big trigger for me lately, is hearing the people that say racism isn't real, it doesn't really exist, it's in your head, you do that. That is a really big trigger for me. So I like that as like a call in. Now I received a private, Catherine saying, thanks for the clarity, Alexis. I received a private message, which again, there is no silly question. So feel welcome to ask the questions, but I could understand why this was private. She's saying, why? It's making me laugh, and I'm not laughing at you. I'm just laughing. It's just energy, but I'm not laughing at you. So please know this. But she's saying, why are you feeling called to share this in a group that's dedicated to raising the frequency when focusing on this just brings down the vibe? So here, I just want to screen share really quick. And if you've done any of my programming, if you've done any of my work, you know this. So this is not mine. It's inspiregoodvibes.org. This is the hierarchy of emotions and the frequency of emotions. And I just want to really highlight this. Okay, so yes, this group is dedicated to keeping a high vibration, raising your vibration, raising your frequency. That is what this is. Keep in mind that inequality, racism, anything but enlightenment, peace, joy, love, acceptance, reason, anything falling below this is a low frequency. It's a low vibe. So you, like exactly what Alexis is saying, if you even know one racist person in your life, what are you exactly doing with that? Is it too much pride to look at it? Is it anger? Is it that you just desire? It's a struggle. So if there's any of that exists, if there's any of that you see, you cannot, like, this has to transmute. It has to transmute into the creative and expansive energy that's up here, right? This is the vibrational frequency of time. So it's a great question. It's a valid question. And my answer is that we have to move in to true enlightenment, peace, joy, love, it has to be transmuted, because there are people in our lives that are suffering, that it is a part of their story, and we have to hold space for them to move through it, to transmute it. We can't just ignore them, because if you are just ignoring them, you then become a part of the problem. So it's requiring your courage. It's requiring your willingness. It's requiring your willingness to look at it, to really truly have love and to have joy. Because if you're in joy but your neighbor isn't, or if you're in peace but your neighbor isn't, right? It's saints and healers energy. You think Mother Teresa was gonna sit there? And no, it's like we have to look at it that way. It's like, love thy neighbor. So that's why this discussion is here, because it is a part of enlightenment as a greater whole. So it's a great question, and I'm not laughing at you.
I have a reply also, or I have a response. That is to me, that universal law, or the vibrational thing, it has to do with what you are able to bring to the situation, not what you are able to turn away from.
My throat.
So if you are not able to talk about these subjects and come from a place of higher vibration, then that means that there is work in you, because we are all one. And one of the things that I do a lot of work on, however, far from perfect, don't get it right all the time, definitely get caught up in my lower vibes. But I can talk about this subject, and I can talk about it with blunt compassion. I can talk about it with love. I can say stuff like, that statement is showing a little bit of privilege, not saying you are showing your, like, I'm not accusing you. We're not accusing you. We're talking about what is and how it needs to be changed. Changing your own vibration, just saying, I'm going to ignore everything that lowers my vibration, is spiritual bypass. Being able to bring love, enlightenment, joy, peace, and harmony to all that which you encounter is what the purpose of, to me, that vibrational chart is, or this rule. What are you able to embody no matter what? Because through that embodiment, you'll be able to be contagious with those feelings and expand them, and you'll expand your light into the dark. But to just say, oh, why aren't we only talking about things that raise vibrations, is to deny the divinity of all vibrations.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think that it's also important to note that it's also, and Gina, I think you kind of hit on it too, is it's finding those lower vibes within yourself. So, perfect example is I work really hard to try and stay high vibe. I mean, I've done a lot of work several years, but in having the very first conversation with Alexis and Gina within the group, I started to recognize the anger and the pride and the things within myself. And by recognizing that within myself, I was able to process, work through, transmute it into a higher vibe, to where, like Alexis, I can now have these conversations without shifting directly into tears and that emotion space, if you will. It's because I'm again, not perfect, but I've shifted that vibration into a higher one to have that.
And having the conversations is the safe space to shift the vibration, in my opinion, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we do this with people who are like, okay, we're going to sink our teeth in, we're going to dig our heels and go and talk about this subject because we have these shared values. And from our shared values, we'll talk about these difficult topics for how we can create a shared future, right? Like you just can't turn away from everything. And I started my spiritual path being a bypasser. Like, good vibes only, don't come to me with no negative nothing. And I had no compassion for my fellow human being because I wasn't being compassionate to my humanity.
Can I ask you a personal question about that?
You can.
Well, did anything show up? And this is for Alexis, but also for the person who asked the question. I'd like to invite you to ask yourself the same thing. Is anything showing up in your body? Did anything show up in your body when you were doing that? Like just bypassing and turning things, like just not looking like good vibes only? Did your body just whisper to you? Did you have anything show up in your body?
Honestly, I was pretty good at it, so my body stayed pretty high vibe too. I had less connection with people.
Okay.
And more connection with spirit. But I judged people rather than love people. And I value connection with people. So there was loneliness that showed up. I don't think I had better health, like better. I mean, I don't really go. If I'm not sick, I'm well. I can't say that I practice the best Western medical care. So let me just throw that out there. For all I know, I could have gotten and healed several things along the way. But I was lonelier. I was less relatable to people. But the thing that happened was when I started judging other people for not being able to bypass too, my vibration began to lower and lower and lower and lower. I just wasn't aware that it was because I got all pumped up on my superiority of being able to vibe so high.
Got it. Okay.
And it was like subtle. It was like the balloon losing helium. But like, you know how over the course of days, the helium just kind of like the balloon gets more and more heavy and it sinks. And like, there's a time where it's just floating here. It was kind of like that. And then I had to start dealing with the things that were already in my body because I was totally not dealing with the body. That's the thing. I didn't consider myself my body. So it was very easy to separate. And so I didn't have things go in my body that were bad, but the more I judged, the more I sunk in my body.
Got it. Okay. So eventually it showed up there. And that's just, I was just curious to know what the answer was because I always find that when we try to ignore these things, it does show up in our body. We can feel it in our body when we come into the body, so that would be my invitation for the person who asked the question. And again, no silly questions. All questions are welcome. Yes. So having said that, are there any other questions for those of you watching? Anything is welcome. You can ask away. Kim, I say burp again, excuse me. I always say that's big energy. Is there anything any advice that you would like to add for people that are, sort of in that similar pathway, or especially for people that are in that place of like, ooh, I don't know where I fit into this conversation, and they may feel anger, or they may feel, these things and they don't even understand, like, where would be your advice for me to start?
Put a voice to your experiences, recognize them for what they are. And I specifically remember something in our conversation, Alexis, is where I said, but I don't feel like I've been oppressed. And you stopped me and I was like, and she goes, well, why don't you think that you are, or you were? And as we had that conversation, I was like, but I really was. So I think even just recognizing those microaggressions and those, even though they may seem little oppressions to you in comparison to somebody else, that it's not about comparing you to somebody else. You have to own your story in order to help add value.
And can you both even just give examples? Because there might be people listening that don't even know what a microaggression is. They might not even know how to define that.
Oh, can I start?
Absolutely.
Because there are so many things like appearing ethnically fluid. I feel like, I've gotten questions all the time like, well, what are you? I'm human. I'm like, no, but like, what are you? And that conversation will last 15 minutes. Or where are you from? And I'll be like, St. Louis. But no, where are you from? I'm like, so again, it can go, I'm like, my mom and dad, like what? What? I don't know what you're trying to ask here, you know? So things like that are, which I know that genuinely it doesn't necessarily come across as that they're aggressive in the question, but I consider it a microaggression in that it can be worded so much better in my opinion.
And how can it be worded better for us, like with the white people who are watching that ask those questions?
May I chime in?
Of course.
Don't ask nobody, what are they? Just don't.
That's true. That's true.
You know, like that's an inappropriate question, period. And your life is not enhanced when you ask that rude question. You're you're opening an opportunity to be judged. And so first, just don't.
You're true. That's true. That's very good. I cancel, delete, erase, even like what should be.
But the thing about where are you from? I just want to, where are you from implies that there is a standard for what American or United States American looks like. That's the microaggression in that statement. So, and then what are you is just rude because I am a human, like you are a human, and I don't even know, I know what you mean by that, but I don't think I don't understand if you are fluent in English, how you think that is a respectful way to ask that question. So you have to take the time to be respectful, right? Like to want to do that, to think about, is what I'm asking respectful? But where are you from means that there is a standard to which you are comparing. And we don't, where we're not supposed to have, as the United States, a phenotype of what being from the United States looks like. We're literally supposed to be a melting pot. So if we're supposed to be a melting pot, we're supposed to be this place where it's liberty and justice for all, liberty, but life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all, then you asking that is unpatriotic. It is, it means that you have some biases in your mind. And guess what? Everybody has them. I took the implicit bias test, showed up, sure do. Well, because
where is that? Where can people find that?
So it's a Harvard implicit associations test. I could bring up I gotta find the link and put it back in the comments. But you can Google it, and it is, and they have several that you can take, right? Like, so there's ableism, gender, racial, there's a few others, 6 of them.
I found it.
Yay. But we all have biases. It's doing the work to become conscious of them. So I remember on our last call, someone said it wasn't top of mind. It's designed to not be top of mind. You have to do the work to make it top of mind so you can notice where you're doing it. But if you are a part of the dominant culture rather than the non-dominant culture, frankly, anybody in this culture is going to have some biases, right? And where those biases point generally have to do with the community you're raised in. Because if you are a non-color and you're raised in if you are a person of color and you're raised in a non-color community, then you're going to have some biases against people of color, even though you happen to be one of them, because you were raised in a non-color community. And I wanted to ask people to take the time to notice what mental hurdles or what feelings you're having when I say color and non-color. How does that sit in your mind? Because that's a more accurate representation of the world. If we're going to be in a racialized society, it should not be white and then every other color. It should be colors and non-color based on the density, the population size, all the things. Yeah. So, we can speak of dominant culture and non-dominant culture, but white isn't the norm.
Yeah. I also want to put, because it's coming to me and I just want to put this in here too, that if you are, I am white presenting, obviously I'm very white presenting. But I'm first generation on my dad's side in America. So, I have to do a lot of digging there ancestrally in my energy. So I also would invite you to look at it beyond just what, Noli's saying the test is really revealing. To look beyond of just what your skin actually says too, like look beyond, do your DNA test, do your 23andMe or whatever you do. I do 23andMe. And go into that ancestry too, right? Because that can tell us so much about what you're receiving in your vibration and in your cells and in your body and in your, in that too. So that just kind of like, as you were saying that, sparked in my mind. And I just want to add that is like, look into that, because what I learned was kind of mind blowing for me.
I in my class, in the course, the Actively Authentic Allyship course, one of the classes pretty much is dedicated to epigenetics, and then an ancestral connection, the topic of ancestral connection and veneration. So we teach about the value of getting in touch with your ancestors, and we teach about the fact that your ancestors still live in your DNA today. And then their trauma and resilience factors have been passed down, and even memories can be passed down for what scientifically has been tested up to 14 generations, but us spiritual people know how it works. So I teach the value of keeping, and I've healed intergenerational trauma because of my ancestral practices and the keeping of my altar. That is open to people who perhaps have racist ancestors as well. Like you could heal, like it may be that you've never done a biased or a racist thing in your life, but your ancestors might have. Well, that's dehumanizing of your ancestors, just so you know. It takes something away from a person to do that to another person. So that lives in you. You can heal that because it may show up in your lived experience. Like, so if you think about it as a vibrational thing and you have some ancestral, how do I put it? Division, let's just call it ancestral division in there, then that might show up in you picking more abusive partners. So it might not even come out against other races, but someone who has that dehumanizing of other humans, and that's your ancestor, and that's living in your DNA, you don't do the work to heal that, then you might be picking more abusive partners consistently. You might pick people who are narcissists, and you have in your family line this cycle of victim, victimizer, victim, victimizer. And that, like, you deserve that healing, right? You deserve not to, your kids, your generations to come after you deserve not to have that cycle that they experience too.
Yeah, and you can have both. Like that, like Noli's saying, people here in Missouri have the same last name as I do, and they are Black. I'm guessing those ancestors had slaves and that I am related. I mean, it's so, so you can have both. And then it's like you can have ancestors that were slave owners. You could have ancestors that were Black people. And then it's like, you have both of those things that live within you. So it's important too. And I love that you're doing that. Where can you tell people, we've mentioned it before, but just so that other people know too, like where people can find out info about your course?
So it is www.askalexis111.com. I'm in the process of having my website blown out. So right now it is just the landing page for the Actively Authentic course. But if you stay tuned, hopefully by the second week, this is November. Hopefully by the end of this month.
Can you believe it's November already?
No, I'm about to say by the second week in November, but we're already here, and I don't know if it'll be live next week. So by the end of this month, it'll be live for all of the rest that is on there. Because we're finishing up week 10, and man, we got some like the reviews were amazing, and someone else was like, one of the people who wrote a review was like, I can't wait to take part 2. And me and my co-facilitator were like, so I guess we got to do part 2 now.
Which is awesome though.
Yes, it's like facilitator, coach, like manna from heaven. Like But for me, it is its own level of restoration, or it has restorative effects, because it's not easy work to bring my lived experience to these stories. And it is an emotional roller coaster. It is healing. This is some intergenerational work that I'm doing, but there was a massacre in a town, Opelousas, Louisiana, and 4 generations back, because it's mom, grandmom, great, 4 generations back, which is the time that the massacre happened. My people lived in that town. So like then they moved, and I don't, so which makes me feel like a part of the Great Migration. But like all the stories is my whole point. I have a story for every single week that like, and every week is a new topic, and it is not the same story, y'all. It is like, well, God bless. Why do I have so much? Why is so much of my life impacted by racism? And I know that that's what I teach. It's a whole nother thing to realize that's also what I live.
What you came here to do. It was.
I don't know why I signed up for this, Gina. I don't know why.
I want to say too, what's really cool and what's so beautiful about doing the work and you doing your own work, and why I think it's so important for all of us to do our own work in regards to generational healing, is because now you're healing that for the generations moving forward. And that's what's so amazing to me is just where are, 4 generations forward, where is that going to be? And like where are we going to be as a people or whatever, whatever, a community, whatever you want to call it. Like that's what amazes me about doing the work.
I hope we're not talking about this in 4 generations. I hope for like in 4 generations, I hope we're talking about interplanetary things.
Right, right.
I wish if we could get our shit together and stop focusing on this infighting, maybe we'll be able to evolve past this planet and out into the whole universe.
I'm just going to say there's a reason that the other beings have not made contact with us right now.
Would you want
to? There's a reason.
I would have to, because the people that would want to do with us, I feel like would want us for food, right?
Yes.
Or they want to like put us in a trance to shut us up, which is what I think happens, right? And they and then they drop us back off. But that's like a whole nother story.
Yeah. But we could just be friendly, and maybe we'll be friendly with the universe, right? We could raise our vibe so high we leave the planet.
Yeah, well, we better figure something out, because Earth, if we keep treating it the same, it's just not going to be here eventually. But that's
Earth will be here. Earth will be here. We won't.
Right. Yeah. So we're going to have to like figure out a plan, as my stepson says, to like start putting us to the moon or to planets beyond, and start figuring out travel. So that
we could all just die.
Yeah.
Or we
I just want to throw that out there. And that is a little bit of fear tactics, but the planet killed the dinosaurs, right? Like something we say asteroid, but we weren't there. It's all these hurricanes. We got all this. We need the earth. The earth does not need us. Please respect her, because she does not have to respect you.
No, think about it. Look at all the, like you were saying, the hurricanes, the fires, like the drought, everything.
Tsunamis, tornadoes. And these are just the natural things, right? There's not even the atmosphere we're tearing up. The trees getting sick, there's fungus all over them. Some of them are dying. Like, these are things we need to live. We won't have bees. And I don't know if y'all notice out there.
Oh, that's
bees
a huge thing.
Plants fuck. And then we need that for food. Okay. And you like flowers? I like flowers. Flowers are pretty, and we need the bees to have flowers. So like there's this whole ecosystem that we're acting separate from, not realizing we don't, all of that stuff would be here if it weren't for us. We're the thing that needs to change.
On many, many levels. And it starts with treating each other differently. More love, more harmony. Yeah. Thank you both for being here today and for doing this.
Thank you.
for having this conversation. And again, you know, for any of you watching, we want your questions. We want this conversation. This conversation is necessary if you truly are going to choose a higher vibration and to stay in your home frequency, because I promise you, you were put here to be an individual of harmony, of enlightenment, of joy, of love. And that is that. Like, you have to acknowledge what is around. We have to acknowledge what is around us. That is what your home frequency is. So if you want to come home, we have to acknowledge. So this is all part of it. And so thank you, Alexis. Thank you, Kim, for both being so vulnerable and for showing up. And thank you to those of you watching. And if you're watching the replay or you're watching this on YouTube or on Instagram, feel welcome to comment. You can find Alexis at askalexis111.com. And Kim is, well, because you changed your alias, you changed your website.
Well, yeah. So it's KimberlyLayson.com. But I am going to be going into, I'm going to be rebranding, renaming to Kim Stock, because I am going to own myself and own my full being. So I will be transitioning over to that. But right now it's KimberlyLayson.com.
And it'll probably forward, I would imagine.
Yes. Yeah. I'll forward it when the time comes, I will.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I thank you both. Thank you for watching. And this is an important conversation. And if it even helps one person, which I think it has already, then we have done our job today. So I love you big. Stay in your home frequency.
Take care of yourself and don't leave the journey.
Yeah, don't leave the journey. Stay on the journey. Yeah. All right. Love you all. We're going to sign off.